Well, guess what, guys? July is Dry Eye Awareness Month, and this morning we're chatting with Dr. Dorian Dwarka, who's an eye surgeon at the CVRS and Trinidad Eye Hospital. Good morning, Dr. Dwarka.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Happy to be on your show.
Nice. So this month, July, is Dry Eye Awareness Month. Now, what is dry eye exactly, and how does it happen?
Dry eye is an umbrella term that encompasses many different aspects of the eye condition in terms of the wetting and wettability of the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens is that your eye needs tears across the surface of the eye to keep it moist,
Right.
to lubricate it, to prevent accumulation of muck and grime and bacteria and other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And also to keep the surface, just like the lens on your camera or your glasses, to keep the surface free of debris so that you can see properly.
Right.
So when we have a compromise of this, either through the decrease in the amount of tears wetting the surface of the eye, or we have a decrease in the quality of the tears, so it doesn't wet the surface nicely. It stays like, droplets rather than spread nicely.
Okay.
We get a series of symptoms that are considered dry eye symptoms, and we call them dry eye disease.
Okay.
Now, what happens with dry eyes is that you have certain minor, very everyday type things related to just the composition of the tears, or the tears evaporating too quickly in, let's say, in an environment with lots of dry environments and so on. And then we have an alternative type where the eyes are not producing enough tears. For example, in cases where we have disease, like they're called autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and scleroderma, and actual certain conditions that damage the cells that produce the tears. So in those conditions, we have decreased tear production. And those are serious conditions where we need to look into supplementing them and looking for the underlying cause.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have other situations, which are the most common ones we get. Like, for example, where we get with the environment, where it dries out in high air-conditioned rooms, very dry environments. So when very topical now, when we're using a lot of screen time, computers and smartphones and so on, where we stop blinking as much as we normally do, and the surface of the eye dries out.
Right.
So this would be the main type of what we call dry eyes, where it sort of leads into a set of conditions or sort of feeling in the eye, where it feels not as comfortable as possible.
Right. Now, Dr. Dwarka, when you say, you're repeatedly blinking, is that is when your eyes are producing the necessary lubricant every time you blink?
So blinking has a particular, we have control mechanisms in the body to regulate how many times we blink a minute and so on.
Right.
So for example, if we're reading, we blink less than if we're in a dry environment or if we're speaking to someone. And what it does, the blink spreads the tears that's produced by the cells in your eyes. So we get a nice even spread across the surface, and it also removes the tears that are filled with gunge and other things. So we have a clear surface. So it acts like a windshield wiper, spreading and removing the unwanted tears from the surface. And when we concentrate on devices, we blink a lot less. So that's why we find that sometimes our vision fogs up, and we have to blink a little more repeatedly to clear gunge that accumulates than when we blink in, let's say, in a normal environment.
Okay. And other than the environment is a factor, but is that what causes the tear ducts to stop producing as much water? You said sometimes they don't produce as much liquid as they need to. What causes that to happen?
This is a little more in-depth one, where we have certain diseases. We have certain cells which we call the lacrimal glands that produce tears. And these tears are different components to it. And in the main component is a watery component. And diseases like that decrease the production, like we have things called autoimmune diseases and connective tissue diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, and these conditions, they can decrease, damage the cells that produce these tears, and we have less tear production. And then we also have other things like medications that can produce that same sort of symptoms. So, example, common medication like antidepressants, acne control medication, birth controls, painkillers, high blood pressure medications, and hormone replacement things can also have these cells produce less tears. So you have disease processes, and we have things that we can do.
Okay.
For example, taking medications.
Right. And at what point should I see a doctor if I experience that I'm having these sorts of dry eye symptoms?
So when we have dry eye symptoms, it is the initial thing is to wet the eye, but it's a like for example, get some tears, get a nicer environment, but it's an advisable thing to have an annual check at the eye doctors. This is a useful thing for all sorts of disease processes. But for the dry eye symptoms, when we start to notice things like, grittiness, feeling of some things in your eyes, itching, redness, blurry vision, increased light sensitivity, having to blink a lot to get that clarity of vision, it becomes a more important thing to have the doctor see you. That's the eye doctor. So when these things are raised with the doctor, what happens is that we can now check to see the source of the dry eye problem. Are we looking at a situation where your eye is producing enough tears? The tear production has been hampered by a disease process, which we will need to be clued on and refer you to be appropriately checked? Or is it because of a small, very common problem, which a lot of us have, like, for example, inflammation of your eyelids, which we can fix and sort of alleviate the symptoms from that. So it's important to have a proper eye examination so we could look for the source of the problem, production, or whether the source is on the surface of the eye, or whether it's the wettability or the spreading, and the different components.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to check.
All right. So before we go, Doc, tell me, how can we, if we get it early, how can we treat it at home? Are there home remedies? I know that they said eye drops are one of the remedies, but are there any other remedies that we can do at home?
So once we identify it with your examination, the majority of dry eye symptoms are easily treated and you are able to control them. Now, we cannot cure a lot of these things because they're environmentally related and conditions that are chronic. But we can make the eye very much more comfortable. So the first thing is we can increase the lubrication to the eyes. For example, we can use artificial tears, which we drop in at different times when the eye feels uncomfortable. A very common condition that affects the eye would be eyelid inflammation, which causes the surface of the eye to be inflamed. So it's called blepharitis, and we can help treat this blepharitis and manage it by eyelid cleansing and moist compresses. Some of the major cause of dry eye symptoms happen when the tear film is affected because the glands are blocked up, and we can use simple methods to help the glands to sort of carry on producing the oils it should to wet the surface of the eyes. The other thing is, for example, if we have symptoms due to use of electronic devices and screen times, we can now have the environment become less humid and sort of humidify the environment and ensure that we don't have direct blowing of the air onto the eyes and sort of desiccate or dry out the eyes, decrease the dustiness and the smoke in the environment. So in addition to using the tear supplements, we could fix our environment and also help our eyelids. Now, in terms of medications, we have tears, but we also have other things that could increase the tear production. For example, cyclosporin drops, which we call Restasis, and a couple other things that are now coming on the market.
Okay. So I wonder if onions would work in that regard too.
Onions definitely work, but they also irritate the surface more, so we get a reflex stirring.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, Dr. Dorian Dwarka, eye surgeon at the CVRS and Trinidad Eye Hospital. And guys, if you want more information on Dry Eyes Awareness Month, or just generally more information about dry eyes, or if you want to go and get a checkup, you can check them out at trinidadihospital.org or give them a call at 235-4834. Thank you so much, Dr. Dwarka. Enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We take a quick break and come back with more inside the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned.